Financial with certified financial planner Christopher Calandra is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Thanks for joining me for episode number 16 of the Simply Financial podcast. I am your host, Christopher Calandra. I appreciate you joining me for today's episode. On today's episode, I wanted to cover financial goals, the setting of goals, the importance of goals, how to set yourself up to increase the chances that you achieve your goals. And I have a very special guest with me to cover this topic. It's Dr. Bridget Cooper. She describes herself as a cage rattler, change strategist, and thought shifter. She has authored several books, including Little Landslides, Power Play, and Feed the Need. She is a coach to individuals and to organizations. I had the pleasure of interviewing her on the Business Buzz radio show along with Jeff Sherman and Marty Keena recently. And because there were 3 people in the interview, I didn't have as much time to explore what I wanted to do with Dr. Cooper. So now's my chance to have her exclusively on Simply Financial, and we're going to cover this topic. It should be tremendous. So first off, Bridget, thanks for joining me.
You're so welcome. Well, now you've set the bar high. I don't know if I'm going to be able to jump over that. But
very high. Absolutely. The pressure is on. So I want to talk to you about financial goals.
Sure.
With your coaching and dealing with individuals and organizations, I imagine you deal with lots of different goal-oriented topics, not just financial. But in terms of financial, it seems to me in my 25 years worth of experience that most people have a lot going on and they have lots to think about. In your opinion, in your work with clients, how important are financial goals relative to all the other things we're trying to sort through in our lives?
Well, I think they're at the basis. I mean, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, financial goals are at the base, right? They're safety and security. So when financial goals aren't attended to, when you're not focusing on getting your basic needs met, your feelings of safety and control met, you can't really do anything else. So I think it's at the bottom, which means it's at the core.
Like foundational.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think even though we don't do a lot directly sometimes with financial goals, because obviously someone like you is more poised to be able to assist someone in creating a plan and executing that plan. I know that if I have a client whose financial needs are not being met or their financial goals are out of whack with what their true priorities are, then we have to have that conversation so that we can make sure that those things are being attended to properly.
Very good. So if I was your client, mm-hmm. and one of the things that I wanted to work on is the achievement of some financial goals,
right.
Making more money, having a certain amount of nest egg for retirement, whatever the case may be, mm-hmm. How, from your coaching expertise, would you start the process of establishing what the goals might be and how to kind of characterize the goals?
Yeah, so when I work with a client, for me, there's a few different angles I come at it depending on what their pain point is. But if they're talking about trying to increase their financial independence, like you said, increase their nest egg, make more money, those sorts of things, I'm going to have to come at it initially with why. And coming at it from where their values are. What are they valuing? What are they trying to communicate with trying to create that? So if it's because they want to communicate to their family that that education is important, so they want to make sure that they take their kids all the way through school, or because they want to get out of the rat race that they're in and they want to start their own business, and that's their kind of angle is to make more money by being an entrepreneur. So we're going to start with values because that underscores everything, every goal that they're going to try to master.
Okay. So just as a side note, this wasn't even in the kind of like my prepared outline, but I heard this recently and I'd like your thought on it. But the number one cause of divorce mm-hmm. is financial related. And so I thought about that in preparation for our discussion today, is that a husband and wife, and this is not a relationship show,
Yeah, sure.
but a husband and wife need to be on the same page and have financial goals that are shared to increase the likelihood that you have a successful, fulfilling marriage. Not so much money-wise, but just not fighting about money, the stresses of debt and income and who's going to work and how you handle the home chores and all of that. Did you know that was the number one?
So if you know from my background, my master's is in marriage and family therapy. So yes, I absolutely know that. And there are actually two things. It's money and sex. And when you look at those two components of a marriage and where stress comes from, money and sex have to do with power. They have to do with communication, and they have to do with values. And when you look at those as expressions of power, of values, and of communication, you can see how that would undermine a marriage. So you're absolutely correct. It creates conversations that have to be dealt with properly. It creates power differentials, whether it's one person staying home, one person making more money, both of them working, whatever it is. It comes into a power discussion. And then it also comes into values. What do you value? I have clients who have marriage struggles because one of them wants to get the bigger house, so therefore they want to be having both spouses making more money. Well, if the other partner doesn't care about having a big house, they lived in a one-level ranch all their lives, and they think that shows good communication and good values, and obviously you're going to have a conflict there. So I think that's where that comes from.
How does prioritization come into this topic? Again, being aware, as I've worked with clients, that there's a lot of demand on people's time, attention, money. There's just a lot going on in most everyone's lives. So when you're thinking about financial goals, and you mentioned values earlier, but I used a different term, like how does prioritization play into this? How do you figure out your goals, and how do you prioritize this relative, again, to all the other stuff we're dealing with and have going on?
Right. So I think priorities can change with time too. So I look at, when I work with a client, what their priorities are today may not be what their priorities are long term, but their goals may stay the same. So they want to have a good, strong nest egg for retirement. They want to be able to put their kids through school effectively. They want to be able to enjoy vacations with their kids while they're young, etc. So those are all goals and priorities that they have, but those shift over time. So like I was just talking to my financial planner, and we were talking about my goals for retirement, but also my goals for putting my kids through school. So temporarily speaking, I may shift some of those priorities to be able to get my kids through school, and then shift back my priorities to looking at retirement subsequent to their education. So some of those things, I think, change and move over time.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because a lot of people think, say, for saving for retirement, and let's say you're 30, 40, 50, it really doesn't matter, that you're going to save for retirement and it's going to be linear, meaning that you're going to save the same percentage or the same dollars each and every year. And it doesn't work out that way. And it's not supposed to, and it doesn't have to. Right. So if you have a client, and I could think of several I could use as examples, Bridget, where they are very, very good savers, and when something's happening where, let's say they're buying a house or starting a business, where the conversation will come up is, all right, we need to dial back or maybe stop retirement saving, and they think that is like
cardinal sin.
Thank you. That's a perfect term for it. And I'm like, no, if it's temporary and it's for a good reason and it's part of the overall construct of a good plan, it's perfectly fine. It's not just fine, it's normal.
Right.
And I know in our in my household, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, is with my daughter going away to school next year, college. She's a senior. I know my wife and I are looking at certain things right now, like she's only going to be with us for a short period of time.
Yes.
And that's influencing some of our decision making, including some of our financial decisions.
Absolutely.
But it's not something that's going to be in perpetuity.
No.
It's only a short time. And that's healthy, right?
Right. Yeah, and funny you brought that up, because a girlfriend of mine last year, her son, as a senior, she said something to me that shifted even as a coach, my awareness, which was, she said, I realize my son is a senior and this is the last year of his childhood. And so anything that I want to have as an experience of his childhood, as a memory, has to happen this year.
Yeah.
I went, whoa.
Yeah.
So and I had been thinking about this, and I'm a very, carpe diem kind of person, but I thought, wow, so my kids, when they describe their childhood, they have, a few years left for them to be able to have those experiences. So what do I value? What am I showing to them in terms of the time I'm spending, the money we're spending, the things we're doing, the activities we're sharing that will communicate to them that this is what childhood meant to them. This is what momming meant to me. And so we've changed some things. We've looked at some things differently and tried to say, are we getting all of the things out of your childhood? Or are we putting all the things into your experiences that we intended to? And if the answer to that is yes, then great. And if it's not, then we need to change some things. So maybe I spend a little more money on a vacation, or maybe I spend a little bit more money on an experience than I might, because in 5 years I can't come back to this.
It's
time.
too late.
It's
yes.
too late. Yeah.
So in terms of, we talked about retirement, and you mentioned values, and things might change. So do you think in setting up goals that they should be broken down between like short, medium, long term? Can you just talk a little bit about how you would advise someone to kind of organize their financial goals?
Yeah.
Again, sticking with that theme of there's a limited attention span. You can't have 27 financial goals, probably.
Right.
And you can't have, I'm going to accomplish these 19 things this year financially. So how would you kind of counsel someone to organize financial goals?
So I think it, again, comes back to an overall, I work with people on what I call strategic life planning, which is handling their life as someone would a business, in the sense of, what do I value? What is my mission? Like, how will I know that I've lived a good life? And so that comes down, that can be broken down into long range, short term, mid range goals. But I think it's about factoring in, how do my values translate to the activities that I'm engaged in? Am I doing the things that I say I value? Am I expressing my purpose in all of the things that I'm doing? So for me, my personal experience is I have a lot of long range goals. Like I'm going to change the world. So, buckle up. But some of those things that I'm doing to execute that long range goal look different today than they're going to look in 5 years when my kids are in college. And I'm very respectful of the fact that this period of time in the last 10 years have been about creating those small changes within companies, within organizations, but that the big stuff, the big blowing off the roof piece of that is going to look different in 5 years, because right now my values are expressed in how I'm spending my time, which is with my children more than anything. So I think you can look at a long range goal for, this is what I want the future to look like, but not to get caught in living life today for the future, because guess what? You got to live life today. So I look at things as being a little bit more fluid with my clients of, yes, we have to set out these short, mid, and long range goals, but don't forget that what you're going to really value is what you're doing in today.
I've heard you say something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, that how someone spends their time and money is very telling. I've heard others say that before. Can you expand on what that means in relation to financial goals and trying to be financially secure, or maybe even financially successful? And that's a fluid term that means different things to different people.
Right.
But let's talk a little bit about how somebody spends their money or spends their time and money is very telling. What does it tell us?
So that was actually a quote that was given to me by, I used to be a PTO president, and our treasurer said that. He said, don't ask people what they value. Just look at how they spend their money and their time. Because people will tell you a whole lot of things about what they value. But when you actually look at how they're investing their time and how they're investing their money, that's what tells you something. So if they're spending all their time on mani-pedis and, haircuts, and they say, I value world peace and, endangered species preservation, you're going to see a disconnect. Right? But if you watch how they spend their time, and they're spending all their time volunteering for those causes, well, then you see what they value. So in terms of financial goals, I think it's similar. So again, taking into account any of your clients, if they're, working